Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Taryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
Good morning, Ops Experts Clubbers and Ben. How are you this morning?
I am doing fantastic. Thursday, and I'm ready to rip rolls for the week.
Also, just to clarify, I feel like I made it sound like you're not an Ops Experts Clubber. You're an Ops Experts leader. So, there's
I'm
that.
the expert of the ops in the club.
Yes. Well, we have a special guest today. Her name is Alex Rodriguez. I don't think either of us have met her before. Have you met her?
Fresh.
Nope. Taryn knows her and talked with her and got her to come on. So we're super excited. Unfortunately, Taryn is off exploring the exotic land of Peru, so he's not with us today. So that's a bummer, but we'll trudge on and we'll have a little party. So let's bring on Alex.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you guys live and in person.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So Alex, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing right now, what your background is. If you're a friend of Taryn, then you're kind of like the top of the experts. So
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So my name is Alex Rodriguez, just like the baseball player. So people call me A-Rod sometimes, and I had to get used to that. I'm not into baseball at all, so I was confused the first few times. But Alex Rodriguez, A-Rod. Let's see. I guess I can give you a quick background. I have a very long education background. I was a teacher for 10 years, elementary all the way up to college. And then in 2019, I was teaching overseas in China and got to experience the pandemic firsthand. From there, I was in Wuhan teaching college in Wuhan. And so that was that's part of kind of my story. So got evacuated, came back home, tried to go back into the classroom, but it was just so different trying to teach post-COVID. And I also had started my own business. At that point, I had a virtual tutoring company that I was trying to get off the ground. And so fast forward 2020, 2021, I was just kind of looking for something different, looking for something new. I started writing because writing is just a passion of mine. So I was writing just for fun, writing blogs, trying to get into that. And then stumbled upon this really great opportunity where I was introduced to a gentleman he's the leader of a company called Kingdom Real Estate Investors. And that's where I met Taryn because the Collab team worked with that company for a while. And so, I started writing for them part-time, and then that turned into full-time, and then that turned into content managing, and then that turned into member success managing. So, and recently I have moved on from that company, but all on good terms. So I'm happy to talk about my time there. And now I'm a staff writer at a nonprofit organization, faith-based nonprofit organization. And they just create resources and curriculum for different partners around the world. And that's my job in a nutshell, I guess.
wow,
The backstory.
A little bit.
a ground zero. That's really something. I'm glad that you were able to get evacuated and everything. Like, wow.
Yeah, that was a whole experience. That there's definitely a book coming out of that at some point in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, man, I feel like we could talk for hours just on how that whole experience went. Cause I remember, like, I'm thinking back to like 2019 now and just like being on Twitter going, like, what is going on over there? Just like, what are these weird things coming out? To be a part of that had to have been mind boggling at the time. Guessing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely like in real time. And, over there, definitely the internet is different over there. So I didn't have access to what was happening on Twitter, or we had a different app, but they had something very similar on their social streams, and they just kept calling it or all of it was straight pneumonia cases. And it started popping up around December, and then January, and then end of January is when we caught the first evacuation plane. And it was me and a couple of others that were working overseas. So crazy times. fun times. And then kind of slowly spread to this corner of the world. I'm like, man, I just escaped that.
Yeah.
I was just going to point out that this is kind of an interesting first for us of people who we've been talking to because, I mean, I feel like a lot of who we talk to, their jobs really took off in 2020 because of how the education landscape changed, because everything went virtual and suddenly it provided this opportunity for kind of everyone to be an educator. And so it launched all these businesses. But it's interesting that you're coming at it, you were an educator already. So you were doing it in the before times, the normal way. And
Sure.
then you pivoted and you were able to carry that on. And so it's in some ways I feel like it's like a really cool advantage that you had in that time, but almost also a disadvantage because, like you said, like you've been educated, you were formally educated, formally trained on like the way to teach. So I'm just interested in how that's translated.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've definitely used a lot of my educating, teaching skills in my new roles. And then back when I was working for Kingdom Real Estate Investors, I got to use all of that to design coursework and curriculum for that company, which was
Cool.
really cool, really exciting. That transferred really well. I always tell people, like, don't underestimate teachers. If a teacher's trying to get a job with you, hire them immediately because teaching is just such a small part of what they do. They have to be excellent communicators, not just to their students, but also to parents and administrators. They have to be the liaison between all of that. They have to take these really big concepts and break them down so that their students can understand them and then teach them really well. So they have to become experts in whatever field they're teaching. But sometimes teachers are just thrown into things overnight. So they have to become those experts really fast. So there's that whole concept. You can't be a teacher without knowing technology really well. I feel like every year they were showing us some new platform that we had to get on, some new
Sure.
website that we had to log into and learn and then use it in your teaching somehow. So yeah, teachers are incredible hires. I'll always say that. And they usually, not always, but they usually just naturally, they know how to lead a classroom. They know how to set schedules. They know how to, they can do anything. Like teachers are superheroes. And I know you hear that a lot, but it's really true. So yeah, I honestly, I don't blame, but I definitely credit my background in education with some of the cool things that I've been able to do now. And then I was really blessed to get to like practice my passion too, which is my passion's always been writing and creating and storytelling. So just kind of combining all of that together in the job that I had before and the job I have now is it's really cool and super fun.
I would say, like, I mean, to me, it makes sense too that in that position, especially as a teacher, like you have to be, I'm sure, so incredibly organized all the time. Like a teacher just seems to me to be a natural step away from like an ops manager or somebody who's directing up just for the amount of organization that you have to have and to be
Yeah.
able to work through timelines like that. How, in your new position now, is it mainly copywriting or are you still creating coursework? How does that look now?
Sure. What I'm doing now is a lot of marketing. My company creates materials for partners around the world who they're teaching, but they're teaching different cultures, I would say different people groups, different languages. So my job is to kind of take what we have and create copy around like, hey, we have this resource that you can use for X, Y, Z. So it's a lot of marketing, but in that it's editing. I just created a poster for recruiting. We're recruiting interns right now for something. So it's various. Like a lot of times it's just proofreading, editing. I'm doing a lot of brand language. So someone will write something and I just have to make sure it aligns to our brand voice and
Yeah.
all of that. So that's new, definitely different, but it's not so new that I'm like, what is this? Like it's doable, it's manageable.
That's
Super.
fun that you get to incorporate. Well, in your last couple of jobs, you get to incorporate your faith in with it as well. Like it almost kind of sounds like what you're doing right now. You're like a remote missionary. Like, like you're like taking missionary materials around the world. You're doing it from home. That's pretty
Sure.
cool.
Yeah, missionaries are actually I would say our target audience too. We want to equip them to do their job well. So we're trying to say, hey, you don't have to invent stuff. We have so many resources. Like, here you go. So it's a blessing to be able to do that.
What would you say has been like one of the the biggest hurdles or I mean getting out of COVID, that's probably a pretty big hurdle. It's probably top of the list. But I
Yeah.
mean, since then, just in your like ascension from with Kingdom REI into this new position, what would you say are one of those large hurdles you'd had to overcome and then maybe what you learned from it?
Sure. I think I'm slowly realizing, like I said before, there are a lot of skills that I have and there are a lot of skills that I don't have. And I have this idea that like I can do anything, just give me something. And for a while, my old manager said, "Hey, try these social media management." And I'm like, "I'm on Instagram all the time. This is going to be a breeze." It was not. It was not. And I'm like, now I know why people get degrees in this stuff and go to school for it because yeah, I'm like, I'm doing all the things and we're not growing. And I'm realizing it is so much more complex and more of a science than I realized. It's not just creating stuff and posting and just throwing it out there, which is what it can seem like from the outside. So I think that was one of my biggest hurdles was like that whole season of like when I was supposed to be curating content for social media, researching as to what's trending now, and then having my boss create content for that and then just falling short and being like, wow, I'm not good at this, which was fine, like having that realization. And then luckily we were able to pivot into something that I was good at and just honing in like, okay, if storytelling's my thing, let's just stick with that. So that was a big hurdle. And I'll say too, I never looked at marketing as something that I wanted to go into. Marketing was just, I was like, that's a whole world that I'm like, that's awesome for people who do it. It's just not me. Let me stick to my teaching. And then so many of the writing jobs and storytelling jobs are marketing jobs. So I fell into that. And so it's been a challenge and a definite learning curve, learning how to, brand voice, brand language. What is that? One of the first things I had to do with my current job is put on a presentation for other writers as to how we brand our products and how to create a brand, how to write with a brand voice. And so I had to put on my teaching hat and be like, let me become an expert in branding overnight and let me do this presentation. So yeah, big challenge, big learning curve.
I love that too, because like you're talking about how teachers kind of have to do, like, they're in charge of their classroom. So you have to be used to just doing everything and like kind of not saying no. And so there's that strength. And when you join a team of being able to recognize where your strengths are and where they aren't. And yeah, like with marketing, it's something that like I think we just au- automatically think of Mad Men. And so we're thinking like money might. And that's a huge part of it. And I think that's probably what you struggled with Instagram is there's so much of it that's like it's not about the content, it's about the way that you're pulling the strings.
Mhm.
And then but it's also the content. And so just recognizing that you're like, yeah, like I rock at marketing content, management and content creation and editing, the little money pulling strings, hashtagging, making sure you're getting the right ad tier, like all of that stuff is just like a whole different brain. And those people probably aren't the most creative or, like they aren't the writers that are doing that thing. So just like the team all coming together.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And like you said, like there's a lot of even now, I think if you look at 2 or 3 years ago, social media is not what it is now. It's just completely different and it's changing. And so having to just roll with those punches and be flexible and grow as you learn. But of course, as a marketing person, your job is definitely tied to performance and numbers. And so having, all of that. Whereas again, going back to teaching, your data is your grades, your students' grades. If their grades are doing well, then you're teaching the content well. In this world, it's all followers and numbers and how many people have purchased this product as a result of this email that you sent. And yeah, ask me to create a campaign and I nope. But I can write all day long, but yeah. Knowing your limits, I think learning what my limits were. And I think that's probably a learning curve for everyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Hey, experts listeners, I want to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time. And we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Is it difficult? I mean, I do not consider myself a copywriter, even in the slightest. Is it difficult, like when you move into this new position, to figure out what brand voice is? Like, how do you even go about like, I mean, now you mentioned, I'm like, what is a brand voice? Like, how do you even go about determining what that is?
Yeah. Well, I learned Google was a really great teacher for me when I had to put together that presentation. But for example, you think of these well-known brands such as Starbucks. They're short, quick, to the point. And then you look at all their examples, all of their posters don't have long headlines because think of their audience. They're on the go. They're here for coffee and then they're on their way. They're not going to stop and read a long poster. So all of that, you think about like the audience of any kind of brand, and then you speak to that specific audience. And, so they would say they're short, quick, to the point, but they're also happy. They try to use positive words. Same with McDonald's, I'm loving it. It's super quick and happy and it evokes a good feeling. So a lot of brand voice has to do with just what do you want the audience to feel when they read or look at your product or your piece of marketing.
Interesting. That makes total sense, especially the Starbucks analogy. That makes total sense.
Mhm.
So when in this new position, did you have to basically determine what this nonprofit's brand voice is, or did they already kind of have that in place, or were they like, "Hey, we need a new voice. It's your job to figure it out."
Well, I was very blessed in that they have a style guide and they have a voice guide, and that was given to me. In my previous company, it was very much a startup. So I think we were still figuring out our voice. And then as I'm in this current position, I keep thinking back to my old job. I'm like, this would have been so helpful back then. Like, oh, I wish I
Right.
would have had this. Low key, I want to like take some of the stuff and kind of give it because I am in contact with my team over there still, and I'll be like, hey guys, check this out. You want to do something with this? Just kind of feed them what I'm learning because it's a lot, and I know they'll get there eventually. But this new organization that I'm working with is massive. It's so big. And I've never worked for a company that's this big before where I'm just a cog in this well oiled machine. And that sounds really negative, but it's actually really positive because, in the job before, I had to wear like, I don't even know, I had 2 different titles and 12 different hats, which is probably why Taryn recommended me for the show. He's like, you're an ops expert. I was like, am I?
You
I
have
don't
to be
know.
in startup. Everyone's an ops expert in a startup.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's why I'm like trying to understand like why did you invite me? But now I understand. I'm like, yes, there was a lot of things that I did that were ops and I didn't even realize it. And then going back to, the teaching, again, you just wear a bunch of different hats. Whereas now I'm in a much bigger company and they're like, oh, here's a brand guide. Here's a brand voice guide. Here are our colors. Here's our design elements. And all of that's already outlined. So taking that, expanding upon it, creating new things based on what's already been given to me and like these guidelines, super helpful. And it's fun. It's really fun to create from a space where you're not just making everything up and hoping it's okay. You kind of have some guidelines.
And it sounds like you've really dived into like a specialized area too, whereas like you were saying, I'm doing everything, which is fine. I guess it depends on your personality. Some people they're like, I love just running everything. Some people are like, I'm really good at this one thing and I want to do this one thing. This sounds like it sounds like you got a good spot there and doing that really specialized thing that you like.
Sure. Yeah. And it's different because like I said before, I had also started my own company. And when you're starting your own company, again, a startup, you just wear all the hats.
Yeah.
You're the director. And it was a tutoring company. So it was also tutoring. I was also providing academic coaching. At some point I did hire some people. I was payroll. I was, training. I was HR, the whole thing. It's a lot. So it's kind of really nice to just do 1 or 2 things for your job.
Collab loves cogs. There's a reason that that's our logo, like we like
Yeah.
the oiled machine. So that's music to our ears. You're talking about wanting to share it with your previous people. I'm like, that sounds to me like an online course that you could, like create and then you could just send it, a coupon code or something to your previous colleagues.
Yeah.
Or
I never thought about that. I have thought of 10,000 courses I could start. Having designed online courses myself, like for other people, I'm like, man, what would my online course be? I have no lie, like a notebook full of ideas and outlines. Like this could be a course and this could be a course. How to survive a pandemic overseas. That could be a course. But yeah, marketing, I would say I'd love to be a little more of an expert in that before I design coursework, but I'm also learning in that space. You don't have to be the be all, end all, know all. You just have to learn to do something, know what you do well,
Mhm.
and then teach it. So
Yeah. I
Could be.
think that hits the nail on the head. I mean, so many of our clients, they're like, yeah, maybe you could find better information somewhere else, but like, I know what I'm talking about. And I may not have been doing this for 50 years, but I've been doing it enough to tell you you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know for a fact that, like me, there's a lot of educators who maybe have been used to be doing something in the past and they're trying to break out of education for whatever reason. They're just ready for a change. I would love to see something for them that maybe a course on how to break out, how to use your skills in the workplace. Like, hey, you were an art teacher. Here's some things you can do. You can get a
Yeah.
job in marketing. You can get a job XYZ, and just breaking it down for that demographic in that market, teachers wanting to switch out into a different career. Here's how to do it step by step and things that you can do. So that's one of the many courses I've thought of creating.
I love that idea just because not just with teachers, but with anybody who's been doing the same thing for a long time and they feel like, they've only gone to school technically for that one thing. So they feel like that's all they're qualified to do. And it's like in the classroom, you're doing so many things. Like you are capable of so many professions that you probably don't even realize because you've worn so many hats
Mhm.
just leading your class. So
Yeah.
that's,
And I also think of not just teachers, but like think of moms. A lot of moms, maybe their kids are going to school, they're ready to jump back into the workforce, and they're like, I've been staying at home for, 5, 6 years. And I'm like, but just think of all the stuff that you're good at. Like, you have to be good at task management, time management, organization, like all of these things. So, really stepping back, anybody who's looking for a career change, step back and like look objectively at the things you can do. All of that can be put on a resume somehow. All of that can be put into skills. And if you just like kind of expand your thinking a little bit and don't just think of, oh, yeah, I organize day to day stuff. Like, no, you organized, you scheduled, you did XYZ. That's applicable in so many different arenas.
yeah.
I think, yeah, too, the biggest hurdle most ops minded people or organized minded people have to jump over is the imposter syndrome of like, oh, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Why would you want to learn from me? The big courses and the people who sell courses are people who've gotten past that. Like, I'm just little old me. Nobody would want to listen to me anyways. But if
Hmm.
you could, especially teachers, like I'm surprised there's not more teachers who transition into like the online course space because like you're so good at it, it feels like it'd be natural. Like, why don't I just go do it online too? But I think there's
Sure.
that like, but who's gonna want to listen to me type voice that if you get rid of that though, you got a lot of potential to do something online.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said that word too, imposter syndrome. That's huge. I think that's a struggle even for people who are on the other side and they're doing it, right? Sometimes like you just wake up and you're like, what am I doing? What am I here?
Yes.
And then there's that idea like anyone can do this. I think my combat to that is, but are they? They're not.
Mhm.
Saying you're the one actually that has the guts to get up and do it. That's the difference between everyone else and you.
Yep.
I love that.
So the question is, are you ever gonna go back to China?
Maybe not as a teacher, but I'd love to go back. Before we got I don't say kicked out, but before we got evacuated on an, emergency evacuated, I had a whole tour of China planned. We had a month off for vacation, teaching wise. I had a whole like tour planned. It was like paid for. It was great. And then they're like, yeah, we're just gonna refund your money. You're not. So I would love to do that. That'd be great.
Be cool.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
fun to go and explore it. Yeah, not from a job point of view, but just getting to just see the beauty of the country and stuff. Explore.
Yeah, definitely. Recommend. I recommend it for sure.
Well, what is some advice that you would give yourself today to yourself that was just starting out? I
Ooh,
guess we could say even just starting out in the teacher sphere or
sure.
just starting out when you broke out of the teacher sphere.
Yeah. I would definitely tell little Alex that think in terms of chapters and seasons, and it's okay to pivot, and pivoting is natural and normal. And, I think having that mindset of looking at every kind of crossroad and not being so stubborn, like, no, this is what I trained to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm paying for still, to the degree that I'm paying for. I think it would have been so much easier for me to shift out of that imposter syndrome to be like, you know what, though, you're not just one thing. You don't just do one thing. And it's okay to have that mindset of, all right, here's a crossroad. Is it time? Do we stay the course or do we pivot? And both are okay. You just have to just understand that pivoting is okay. And it doesn't matter what title you wear, like people are multifaceted. People, you don't just do one thing. You're not just about one thing. And so just combat that voice that says, who are you to do it? Who are you not to do it? Just go for it,
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Just like you said, I mean, if everybody could do it, everybody would do it, but they're not. So you do it.
Exactly.
I think that's
Yeah.
a great point that you made about pivoting too, because we talk often in this show, like most people that we talk to started out as something completely different than the space that they're currently in because they pivoted. But something
Mhm.
that you brought up that's kind of different than others that we've talked to is that a lot of folks that we've talked to haven't paid exorbitant amounts for education. And that's where there are some jobs that cost a lot for that education, like higher education is expensive. And so I appreciate your perspective where you're saying, like, even still, like, you have to go for it because I think that a lot of us feel trapped by that monthly student loan bill where it's like, yeah, but like, I'm going to be paying this until I'm 56. Like, I need to make sure that I am like getting my worth out of that. And you still are because you still learned things that are pertinent to life in general. It's just
Sure.
maybe that degree, the title on the degree doesn't match with the job, but it's still you're getting better ROI with the different job, the different direction that you're still using those skills from the other one. Like I went to art school. Obviously, I'm not doing, but the skills that I learned in art school still feed into like everything else that I'm still doing. So I love that you brought that up because I think that that's something that we haven't really covered before on this show is that like little monthly monetary thing that's like, yeah, but, like, should you do that other thing that you really wanna do that's calling to your heart and actually speaks to your purpose? Because remember, like, we still got that bank account over there, so
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's huge. And I think it's just removing those limits. And as you're speaking, Savannah, I'm thinking that's the difference between training and education. When you're educated, you can do so much. When you're trained to do one task, one specific thing. And that's the training, right? We don't go to training for 5, 6, 7 years. We get educated for, from the time we're 5, 6 years old to however long we stay in school. And the education is really applicable in so many different facets of life. So I think this went a little more philosophical than maybe we were planning, but hey,
love it.
we got to make it good.
I love philosophical. I love taking that track. Obviously, we give practical advice too, but the philosophical, we gotta speak to that sometimes.
Sure.
I love it. Love it.
Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. So great to meet you, and I hope to see more of you in the online sphere. Maybe Collab will get to work with your nonprofit at some point. That'd be exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you, Alex, and we'll see you around.
Great to meet you guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Fox Experts Club.
Hey, Experts listeners, I want to key you into something that we do very special here at Ops Experts Club, and that's a masterclass. We have a free masterclass called Foundations That Scale. And the great thing about this masterclass is it's for operation professionals who are growing businesses. One of the most dangerous things you can do as an operator is grow businesses on a foundations that's not stable. So in this particular masterclass, we take apart all of the inside pieces of your team, your tech, and how they're using time. And we make sure that you're building on a foundation that's stable. So if you want to check out a great masterclass completely for free, go to foundationsthatscale.com. We'll see you there.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.